Hello, everybody. It's Phil Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. And today is Friday. What is it? The 3rd of September, 2021. And what I'm going to talk about today is the decision by the Virginia State Supreme Court yesterday to permit Governor Ralph Northam to remove the Confederate statue of Robert E. Lee on Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia. So the topic of this is Robert E. Lee and race obsession. The pending removal of the Robert E. Lee statue on Richmond's Monument Avenue is the latest consequence of a culture obsessed with imaginary systemic racism. Presently, the only legal systemic racism is 50-year-old affirmative action, which benefits minority races. According to Black Hoover Institution senior fellow Shelby Steele, affirmative action was the first of a long chain of futile initiatives prompted by white guilt to lift blacks out of poverty. All failed because their true motivation was to provide the ruling white elites the moral authority to continue governing. Affirmative action never closed the academic performance gap between blacks and whites, and government housing forced black fathers out of their homes. Instead of promoting self-reliance in the black community, they discouraged it, both of those things. They were, however, habit-forming bribes for black votes. Confederate statue destruction is merely the latest bribe. Although chiefly a symbolic gesture, it is a vote and donor magnet for race-hustling politicians and activists. Razing Monument Avenue statues will do nothing to lift black self-esteem, but it may deepen the racial divide with those who admire Robert E. Lee's leadership qualities. Compare, for example, President Joe Biden's Afghanistan leadership to that of Lee at Gettysburg. Both faced decisive defeats, but Biden's concluding press conference tried to celebrate his chaotic withdrawal as some kind of a victory for ending a 20-year war. Completely phony. In contrast, when the repulsed soldiers of Pickett's charge returned after heavy losses to Confederate lines at Gettysburg, General Lee rode out to meet them. He immediately took responsibility for the failure right there on the field with soldiers of every rank. When a distraught general tried to summarize the carnage in his brigade, Lee replied, "Never mind, General. All this has been my fault. It is I that have lost this fight." To General Pickett himself, he said, "Your men have done all that men can do. The fault is entirely mine." Close quote. Neither then nor any time later did Lee blame any of his subordinates. Unlike Biden, who tried to manage the Afghan departure in luxury from his Camp David taxpayer retreat, Lee shared soldiers' hardships. He normally slept in a tent, whereas other Army commanders often appropriated the home of a nearby prosperous citizen. About a month after he got his army safely back into Virginia after Gettysburg, he submitted a battle report to President Jefferson Davis. It praised his soldiers, and he took all the blame on himself. He wrote, "I know how prone we are to blame others for non-fulfillment of our expectations. The general remedy for want of success in a military commander is his removal. But instead of waiting to be removed by Davis, he offered his resignation." So he proffered his resignation, which Davis rejected. Lee's soldiers knew that his acceptance for the Gettysburg failure was genuine. It enabled the army to recuperate to a point where it thrashed General Ulysses Grant's bigger army at the Battle of the Wilderness 10 months later, the first time those two famous opposing commanders met. No commander, North or South, was more beloved by his soldiers than General Lee. General Grant amplified this point himself after Lee's surrender at Appomattox. When Lincoln's war secretary asked Grant to what impact Lee's surrender would have on the remaining Confederate armies in the field, there were some in North Carolina, Alabama, and also in the Trans-Mississippi. Anyway, Grant replied to the War Secretary Stanton, quote, "All the people, except a few political leaders in the South, will accept whatever Lee does as right and will be guided by his example," close quote. In contrast, President Biden told us, all of us Americans, that he had consulted with NATO before starting the Afghan withdrawal, even though the British Parliament promptly denied his claim and evenly condemned him officially for saying that and not consulting them. Earlier, Biden stated that it was extremely unlikely that his evacuation would be as chaotic as the fall of Saigon 45 years ago. Well, it was worse. It was worse. In truth, the fall of Kabul was worse. After he could no longer hide the chaos, Biden promised that all Americans that wanted to evacuate would be taken out. That didn't happen. We know that. He also boasted of taking out 100,000 Afghans, but he did not tell us that most of them, by far the majority of them, could not possibly have been vetted for terrorist backgrounds. So we have to wonder how many terrorists he's let out of Afghanistan and how many of them are coming to the United States. Out of 100,000, you know, the 100 of them would be a tiny percentage, but it could have a big impact here, and 1,000 will be only 1%. It could have a big impact here in the United States. But if these people are actually, some of these people are actually, you know, with Al Qaeda or something like that. He didn't vet them. He's just created a damn mess. He also, you know, to change the media narrative, Biden made a video address to the American Jews concerning their September holy days this year. It's come, you know, right now. And during that video, he falsely claimed to have visited a Pittsburgh synagogue that was violently attacked 3 years earlier in 2018. That synagogue was never visited by Biden. He was never there. Trump did go when he was president. Trump went and visited that synagogue. Finally, when saying, quote, "the buck stops with me," this is Biden, "the buck stops with me," close quote, he often tried to put the blame on Trump for a conditional executive agreement that Biden falsely claimed had straitjacketed him. I mean, telling you, all right, the buck stops with me, but, you know, listen here, the reason I had to do this is because of what Trump did last year. There's no credibility to that. As the political leader of the identity politics movement here in the USA, Biden's conduct must give us pause. America cannot prosper if her own political leaders constantly disparage her. Both Shelby Steele and Brown University economics professor Glenn Loury consider themselves Americans first and Black men second. Loury states, quote, "the richest and most powerful segment of the worldwide Black population is here in America. We have Black billionaires. Who thinks the American dream is a fraud? Are you kidding me? Tens of millions of non-European immigrants have come to this country in the last 50 years. The statistics show they are all doing that. They are doing well on average. America is an open and free society." These comments are from Glenn Loury from Brown University. Identity politics is poison. Tearing down Confederate memorials will not advance the status of Blacks, while affirmative action and monument destruction can be vote magnets for the white ruling class. They might become increasingly offensive to the white middle class, who gets no benefit from them and is sometimes penalized by them, certainly with affirmative action. Nobody knows how this is going to turn out. We don't have the benefit of 2020 hindsight of history. Today's polarization rivals that of the 1860 presidential campaign. Now, at that time, when they didn't know what the future held, the 1860 candidates thought they were only arguing politics as usual. With 2020 hindsight, we know something much worse came next. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'd like to share something with you. And there we go. You should be seeing it now. There it is. If you'd like to learn more about what Lee did during the Civil War, you may want to read my Confederacy at Flood Tide, which covers from June of 1862 to December of 1862, when the Confederacy came closest to winning its independence. Lee was a big part of that. He certainly wasn't all of it, because the book covers, you know, the Trans-Mississippi, the Western Theater, the Eastern Theater. It covers economic developments, diplomatic developments, even some espionage developments. So I really had fun writing. I think that if you're interested in the Confederacy, that this book will be of great interest to you. So you can get it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, $28 for hardcover. If you want to get an autographed copy and you live here in the United States, it'll be $31. Just contact me, Phil, P-H-I-L _ Leigh, L-E-I-G-H at me.com. Email me, and we'll make arrangements for payment, and you give me your postal address and I can send you the book, an autographed version, for $31. Okay, so that's our show for today, and thanks for watching.